Is it ready for me to begin? And
anytime.
Okay, great.
Yes, it's ready.
Well,
go ahead.
All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody. This webinar is sponsored by the Teaching Statistics in the Health Sciences section of the American Statistical Association. My name is Amy Nowacki, and I'm the current section chair. I'd like to welcome you to the webinar, and if you are not a current member of our section, I'd like you to encourage you to consider joining. We host a number of activities throughout this year and work to build a community of statistical educators who primarily work in health science settings. You can keep abreast of the latest news by visiting our blog or our website. So the format for this afternoon's webinar is that our speaker will present for 30 to 35 minutes, followed by 10 to 15 minutes of discussion, question, and answer. All attendees will be muted during the presentation. If you have questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to enter your questions. Our speaker may choose to answer questions during her presentation, or she may choose to wait until the end. Please do not use the chat feature. Again, we ask that you use the Q&A button for your questions. Our speakers. Erin Blankenship is a professor of statistics and associate dean in the College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. She is a fellow of the American Statistical Association. She is going to be presenting today with Ella Burnham, who is a PhD student at the University of Lincoln, Nebraska, with research interest in statistics education. Today, they will be speaking about lessons learned revising an online introductory course. Thank you, Erin and Ella.
Thank you so much, Amy. We're both so excited to be presenting this webinar for you all today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And just move some stuff around. Okay. So thanks again for inviting us to give this webinar. We're going to be talking about revising an online introductory course. I'm going to do about the first half, and then Ella's going to pick up with the second half. My half is going to focus on the logistics of the course, how we set it up, what changes we have made as we've taught it over the course of several semesters, and Ella will be picking up with the research she has done in the course. So just to start off with some course logistics, this is Stat 218 at Nebraska. It's the non-calculus based introductory course. We've got about 12 sections a semester. I think we serve maybe 700 and some students per semester. Our section is fully online and asynchronous. We do have office hours virtually and face-to-face. We use the Tintle book that is focused on simulation-based inference. And our course is delivered through the Canvas learning management system with full Wiley Plus integration. We do have the luxury of a wonderful digital learning commons on campus that gives exams for us. Students are required to take their exams on campus in the UNL Digital Learning Center. If they are 35 miles or closer to Lincoln, if they're farther away than 35 miles, they have the option of having their exam proctored. So this is sort of the setup we're working with for our course. Here's what a typical day looks like. We've laid this out as a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type course. So you can see this is the outline for week one. We always start each week with an overview video from one of the instructional team. One thing I should have mentioned is that Ella and I are just two members of the instructional team. We typically have one or two other graduate student instructors helping us with the course. This semester we have 2 additional graduate student instructors helping. So that week one overview always starts with a video from one of the instructional team. We have a discussion board with a new thread for each week for students to post questions or comments they have about the material. And then we have it broken out by day. So for example, Monday was introduction to the 6-step method, and you can see we've got a couple of sections that they read and then an assignment that they completed. So this is what a typical day looks like. And here's sort of the breakdown. Once they go into this Monday introduction to the 6-step method, this is what they would then see. So they've got some readings. There's a video where we talk through maybe a concept. There's not always a video on each day. And then finally, we have the practice exercises that they are completing for that content. So as you can see from the previous slide, we not always, but mostly start each day with a reading. Maybe there's a video. Sometimes that video would be comprised of if the students sent us data that we collected across the board. So for example, one of the first things we do is have all of the students flip a coin 16 times and send us the number of heads they observed. We would then create a video with their data so we could talk through what would be an unusual occurrence and what wouldn't be an unusual occurrence. Practice exercises, these are typically book problems that are automatically graded by the Wiley Plus integration. There's an exploration activity often. That's a downloadable, fillable PDF that gets more into the conceptual understanding. They complete it, they submit it through Canvas. Maybe there's a group activity. There are about 7 or 8 group activities over the course of the semester. And here is how we break out the assessment. 25% is based on homework and participation. That's going to be things like the book problems, like the explorations, like the group investigations that they do. Also data collection may show up. Can you provide the citation reference for the Tintle book? Yeah, it's Nathan Tintle, Beth Chance, I forget who else. It's a Wiley book. It is called, I can pull it off my shelf somewhere. It is called, maybe not. Oh, Introduction to Statistical Investigations, volume, or it's not volume 1. First edition, it's first edition. So homework and participation is 25%. We have 5 quizzes. Those are each worth 25% for a total of 25%. 2 exams that are each worth 20%, and an article critique, which we'll talk more about in a bit. So here's what worked. The assessment plan. We have gotten pretty efficient at grading, I think, particularly the explorations, which have a lot of questions in them. I mean, the explorations run 4 to 5 pages in a PDF. We've got 90 students every semester, and there can be 3 of them or even more, maybe never more than 3, but there can be 3 of these due in a week. But we've got pretty efficient. For some explorations, we pick maybe 4 problems that we think are the most important for a student to understand what's going on with an exploration, and we'll go through and give feedback just on those 4 problems. These are graded for completion, so we don't take points off. We don't have to spend time figuring out, is this a -1 or a -2? We just give the feedback, give full credit for completing them. Other explorations, we just look to see if they were done. We don't give any feedback, but then we create a video that walks through the exploration step by step that we then post in the discussion board for students to respond or to watch on their own and then ask questions about. So the assessment plan has worked, I think, really well. The other thing that has worked are we just do really short introductory videos. When we started designing this course, our instructional designer that we worked with at the university really encouraged us not to use recorded lectures. She said students really don't watch them. They don't get a ton out of them. So she encouraged short intro videos. So that's what we've been doing. I think those have also worked pretty well, although we have some data on how many people are watching them, and it's not everyone, or even a majority. So maybe they haven't worked as well as we think they have, but I kind of think if that small proportion are watching the intro videos, I have no idea. Oh, how long are they? Some of them are as short as a minute. Some of them are 10 minutes. It really depends on the content that we're covering. I don't think we've ever had an intro video that is longer than 10 minutes. And we've been using Zoom for office hours, and I think that has also worked really well. What didn't work? Wow, technology the first semester was really, truly terrible. I think most of that came from the Wiley Plus integration. It just didn't work that first semester. So most of the technology issues, I think, have been ironed out at this point. The other thing that didn't work the first semester were groups. We placed students into groups randomly that first semester, and there was a lot of dysfunctional groups. They weren't working together. They were submitting assignments on their own without consulting with the group. So we've found some ways around that, which I'll touch on in a bit. The other thing that did not work the first time around was the discussion board. We were not getting any action. We told students that all questions had to be posted in the discussion board unless they related to a grade, but students were emailing us questions. They weren't, they would ask a question that had already been answered in the discussion board, so they didn't work. The other thing we found is that students did not read announcements, and I'm not sure we still have figured out a way around that. The things that were a toss-up were the rigorous, we've got an incredibly rigorous schedule. Stuff is due, multiple assignments are due every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. For some students, that worked really, really well. The students that stayed on top of their assignments and really participated and engaged with the material did really, really well in the course. However, we had a pretty bimodal distribution of final grades at the end. There were some students who just did not engage, fell behind, and as rigorous as the schedule was, it was a really big hurdle for them to overcome. The other toss-up was the article critique. So with the article critique, we provide students with a few articles to choose from. We give them some example article critiques. The first few times around, we used popular press articles, so they came from CNN and the Washington Post, places like that. We asked the students to just write a critique of them, and we gave them some examples of what we thought were good and bad critiques. We also had some peer review opportunities in there for them. The first time around, there was quite a bit of confusion about what was due when. We only had a final Canvas assignment for that final submission, so there was confusion about deadlines. So we've made some adjustments to the article critique, which we'll see in a second. So what did we revise? We've revised a lot. One of the big things we added, and I think we started this in, yeah, I will talk about a problem of ignoring the discussion board. We started a Canvas quiz over the syllabus, I think in spring 2019. It's worth 20 points, counted as a homework participation assignment. And we've got this week in the semester when students can add and drop. And we really wanted students to take the syllabus quiz as soon as they enrolled in the course, or as soon as the semester started. But because of this week-long add drop period, we had to make it due like right after that add drop period ended. We had some questions. We told them to read all of the content, watch all of the videos in the Getting Started module before completing the quiz. Most of the problems were graded for correctness, a few were not. So the problems that were graded for correctness were things like, I can submit late work, false, you cannot, or how many homework assignments get dropped, 10. So you can kind of tell the fact that we dropped 10 assignments, there are a lot of assignments. So a few of the questions were not graded for correctness. So I kind of jumped the gun here. How many homework scores get dropped? How many late assignments are accepted? How many quizzes there are? Where exams have to be taken? Questions like that. Based on our, some of the questions were based on issues we saw in fall 2018. So for example, we had a lot of issues with lost university IDs, and then students couldn't get into the testing center. So we added a question about, I can take an exam without an ID if I have a note from the ID office. False, you cannot. So we added questions about that. We added questions about group members submitting assignments separately because that had been an issue. We asked questions about the pace and how often students should check the Canvas announcements. Another thing we added was we have instructor introductory videos at the beginning of the course where we just introduce ourselves. We talk about some of our philosophy behind the course, how the course will work. And at the end of each video, we have a secret word. So I might say, my secret word is donut. I don't remember which semester mine was donut. And then we add a syllabus quiz question about what the secret words for each of the instructional team members were. And then our final question was, I understand that this section of 218 will likely require more time on my part than would a face-to-face section. And again, graded for correctness. Some some questions were graded for completion, and these are the questions we used to form our groups. So we asked things about, do you typically complete work as soon as it's assigned, or do you wait till the very last minute? Do you live in Lincoln? Would you be interested in meeting with your group face-to-face to work on assignments? And it was the procrastinator versus not procrastinator, and do you want to work face-to-face with your group, that really helped us figure out who should be placed into which group. And I think since we have done that, the groups have functioned better than they did when we were just putting students into groups randomly. The discussion board, here's where we tried to drive more traffic to the discussion board. We made an incentive for posting. We said that we'll monitor the discussion board from, I think, 8 to 8 every day. Canvas is really nice in that it will send you a push notification if anyone submits a comment, so that I get a ding on my phone to go look at the discussion board. But we would monitor it from 8 to 8, but students were encouraged to answer each other's questions. And as an incentive, we said the first correct response will get 1 point of extra credit in the homework and participation category. And especially in spring 2019, that worked beautifully. Our traffic in the discussion board last spring was outstanding. Our traffic in the discussion board this semester has not been as good as it was in spring 2019, and I'm not sure why. This past week, maybe because there was an exam, I'm not sure. This past week, the discussion board was just hopping. But some weeks there's just nothing there. Well, one thing we state in the syllabus, and I'm not really great about it, I need to get better about it, is we state in the syllabus, if you send us an email question, we're just not going to respond to it. And I'm not great about ignoring those emails. I have gotten a lot better about just saying, replying and saying, post this in the discussion board. And I think I've already mentioned we have one discussion board thread for each week. That just helps us keep stuff straight. The changes we made to the article critique, we made some better clarity on due dates. We created some Canvas assignments that weren't worth anything to emphasize the deadlines. And we made meeting intermediary due dates part of that overall grading rubric. We had examples of good and bad critiques from the beginning. One thing we added to help them with their peer review was some examples of peer reviews with graded rubrics. And I think that has helped. This semester, I'll get there in a sec, I guess. So some minor revisions we made for fall 2019 are we added some questions to the syllabus quiz. We asked about working with PDF files in Canvas because that was one sticking point. We get a lot of blank PDFs submitted because they just bring it up in their browser, enter their answers, and don't realize they have to download it or it won't save. So we added some questions about working with PDF files. We added a question about what time of day you tend to work on assignments, and we used that to form our groups. I'm not sure that has done a lot. We also have stopped changing groups in Canvas. It was just a huge inconvenience. We found that we had to rearrange some groups due to small group sizes. And we actually created new groups in Canvas, and we found this was super confusing for the students. The way it shows up in Canvas with the different groups, those groups look identical to them. So we just stopped changing groups. If we need to, we'll move students to a new group, but leave the groups as they are. The other minor revision we made this fall, which has worked beautifully, is we were piloting a UNL textbook project, wherein always before the students had to purchase a code either from our bookstore or from Wiley directly online to enter in to get access to the book. UNL piloted a system this fall where the books are automatically added into Canvas, and then a course fee is added to the student's account after the second week of class, when they sort of, after the dust has settled on the add and drops. That has worked beautifully. We had a lot of trouble with codes not working and students not entering codes correctly, but just having the book there from the very beginning has been amazing. And we're going to continue with that in the spring. Oh, so our major revision for fall 2019 was we had new articles. As I mentioned earlier, our articles in the past have been popular press articles. There were things about like childhood obesity. There was one about autism and vaccines. Articles like that. This time we decided we would pick research articles that are based around student behavior in universities. So the example article that we wrote good and bad critiques of for them to use as examples were about where students sit in a lecture hall and how that impacts their course achievement. And then the three that they were choosing between, one was about measuring actual learning versus feeling of learning in an active learning classroom. One was about whether or not PowerPoint slides should be provided. And one was about laptop multitasking and whether it harms achievement for students who are multitaskers and also nearby peers. One thing we have found is these article critiques, I think we're in the process of grading them right now, have been better than they've been in the past, and I think they're a little bit easier to grade than they have been in the past. Another major revision we made for 2019, if any of you are familiar with the Tintle book, it has applets that go along with it. We had never used the applets or allowed students to use the applets in the exams before. We did it this time, and I'm just going to say, wow, it was not a good revision. This was an awful revision. We found that it slowed down the computers in the testing center, and some students had their exams freeze. They couldn't get in, they couldn't do anything. So we will not be adding applets in the future. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ella.
Okay, so I am going to talk a little bit about some of the initial data collection and analysis that we have done for fall 2018 and spring 2019. So in those 2 semesters, we had a total of 130 students who agreed to participate in the research. However, 5 students were excluded due to age, and this is because in Nebraska, you have to be 19 to be considered an adult, so we excluded anyone under 19, and then 40 were excluded due to missing survey data. We're trying a different method this time to hopefully increase our response rate, but in total, we had 85 participants that are included in the analysis that I will cover today. Our students in these 2 semesters were primarily science, math, technology, health-oriented, and humanity majors. So with our IRB approval, we have access to quite a bit of information to use in research. Some of the regular course requirements that we can use are their exam 2 grade, and that is actually the last exam that they'll take in the class. We have access to their final overall score in the class. We have access to pre-post revised comprehensive assessment of outcomes in a first statistics course, which I'll refer to as CHAOS. We also administer 3 surveys. One of the surveys is administered as a pre-survey, and that's a survey of attitudes towards statistics. So that's administered right at the beginning of the course. Then we administer the post version of that at the end of the course, as well as a digital education and technology advancement survey, which is DETA, which really gets more at students' perspectives and behaviors in the online course. So with the DETA, 5 of the subscales that we really have focused on investigating so far are directedness, and directedness, that survey really asks questions about how good are you at learning outside of class, your level of initiative, are you good at setting goals, things like that. Next, what you'll notice is the next 2 bullet points both say interactivity. Those are 2 slightly different variables. So the first one really focuses on the instructional characteristics, so like the instructor-student and student-student interactions that were kind of provided to them. For example, one of the questions regarding the instructor-student is the instructor helped facilitate my learning, the instructor communicated ideas to me, and some of the student-student ones are things like I had a chance to introduce myself, I had a chance to work in groups, things like that. And so I'll refer to that as ICA activity in this presentation. The next one is interactivity, and that really more focuses on student behavior. So how often did you post on the discussion board? how often did you interact with peers, things like that. The next variable that we looked at was active learning behaviors. So those behaviors are things like how often do you reflect on the readings and how often did you critique others' work. The last bullet point is engagement, and that focuses a lot on, was this course challenging, was it exciting, things like that. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about analyzing their final course grade. And so that was measured between 0 and 100. And we also administered the SATS 36. And so that one has the 6 subscales, which are affect, which measures students' feelings about statistics, their cognitive competence, so like their attitudes about their intellectual knowledge of statistics. Value, which is what value do they see in statistics, difficulty, interest, and effort. And so those are all related to their perspectives in statistics. So my first model that I looked at was really looking at those student characteristics with regards to their final exam score. So I ran a linear model where I had an effect of directedness, the interactivity, both of those two, the active learning, engagement, and I also included an effect for age and their sex. And I had a random class effect as well. And what I found is, we see this large table, but what I really want to hone in on is the only significant effect that I found was there's a positive association between directedness and their final exam score. And so we found an estimate of 9.47, p-value less than 0.001. So that was really the only significant effect that we found. But again, we've only have data for 2 semesters. Next, I looked at the SATS 36, and due to some IRB delays, we weren't able to administer the pre-SATs in the fall of 2018. So in this presentation, I'm just going to focus on the spring of 2019. So I only had 33 participants that took both the pre and the post of the SATs. And so what we found is the affect, we didn't find a significant mean difference between beginning of the end, and even the estimated mean difference was quite small. For cognitive competence, we found a significant difference, and we did find an increase in their cognitive competence from pre to post. Value, again, we did not find a statistically significant mean difference between pre and post. Difficulty, again, no statistical difference. Interest, this one was marginal, but unfortunately we saw a negative interest. So they seemed like they had higher interest in statistics at the beginning compared to the end, which is ultimately not our goal. We're hoping that they're finding it more interesting, but from our preliminary analysis, I'm not seeing that. Again, effort, we didn't see a difference from pre to post. So conclusions are, overall, we saw directedness appeared to have a strong effect on students' performance. Also, we saw an increase in cognitive competence from the beginning to the end, but that's kind of a little bit more of a practical significance. It was only an increase of 0.3, so does that really have much meaning? So what we decided to do is, we were really hoping in our model, and we were hoping that instructors can have a positive effect on students. So we, this semester and in future semesters, are implementing an intervention that really focuses on increasing the instructor-student interactions and kind of the instructor social presence as well. And so we did 4 major things that I think allow students to communicate and interact with us more. To begin with, right away at the beginning of the semester, we had a Zoom meeting assignment. And so basically we just required that each student would sign on to Zoom, sign up for a time. We did 5-minute time slots, log on to Zoom, and basically just make sure that they could get onto Zoom. And so if they ever wanted to have a virtual meeting, there was less fear on, I'm not sure how to do that, I don't know if I can get it to work. So, and we could also ask them a couple questions just about, like, what do you like to do for fun? Just a little bit to get to know them. We also implemented virtual and face-to-face optional review sessions. And so this happened before the 2 exams that happened during the semester. And what we found, or the attendance this semester was, we had about 13 students come to the face-to-face review sessions, and about 6 students come to the virtual. So we saw some students come, and then we also encouraged them, they couldn't make those times work, to talk to us or set up an appointment with one of us. The third thing that we implemented are more of these targeted emails. And so students who weren't currently engaging in material were contacted 3 times during the semester. And so we had a criteria based on their current performance in the class and also their level of participation. So that was like a % completion on activities. And so if they met those, they fell below those thresholds, then we would reach out to them and encourage them to start doing a little bit more of the activities, reach out to us, ask questions. We also implemented a weekly introduction email. And so this one was a little bit more of a get to know your instructors versus a this is what's happening this week, very rigid content sort of email. And so I think those emails hopefully are working well. I hope that students enjoy them. So this fulfills an ACE-3 requirement.
So ACE is the UNL General Education System. There are 10 outcomes the students have to meet over the course of their undergraduate career. Outcome 3 is the quantitative literacy. Students don't all have to take the same course, but our course is certified ACE-3, so they can take it to fulfill their quantitative literacy requirement. And for some degree programs, it is required.
So in the future, we are going to do more data collection and research, obviously. So we are planning on collecting data from the analytics available on Canvas, and this has been helping us implement our intervention. We're going to investigate further what factors influence students' learning. So we really want to start analyzing that pre-post chaos. And we also, in our IRB, have access to a couple questions about how they're working in their groups. So we're interested to see what students have to say about that. Awesome. Well, thank you.
That's what we've got. What questions can we answer? We can't hear you, Amy.
Do we have any additional questions for our presenters? I guess one question I have would be for somebody who is just starting out planning an online course, what would you say would be like top 2 like things to focus on? Because it seems like there's a lot of things that you fine tune as you teach it over and over. Mm-hmm. But if you only had kind of time to really focus on maybe 2 big areas, what would be your recommendations or words of wisdom?
So one of my recommendations, and I don't know if this is an option for everyone, UNL has a great staff of instructional designers. And we worked really closely with one of our instructional designers to help us lay this out. She was the one who really helped us think through about when assignments should be due, what should be the schedule, how long should videos be, stuff like that. So that would be my big thing, is if you've got instructional designers, make use of them. Don't try and do this on your own if you don't have to.
My biggest suggestion is try and make it as well laid out and organized as possible. Even if you think you're being clear, like try to be even clearer, because I feel like the organization is so important in an online course.
So somebody asked about, would you recommend the Wiley text? This is the book we used. Since we're on camera again, I can hold it up. Introduction to Statistical Investigations. I really, really love the simulation-based approach to inference. So I would definitely recommend that. One thing I liked about the Wiley Plus integration was just the plethora of questions we can add that are going to be auto-graded. So we didn't have to write book questions for them to do. We didn't have to write quiz questions. We could just import them from the book. So were there technical glitches? Yes. Did I say nasty words to Wiley Plus as I was a few times that first semester? Yes, I did. But I think most of that has calmed down. So we have a question about what kinds of assignments worked, which did not. I think I really like the explorations. I think the students, I think sometimes they get a little bit frustrated because they see the same questions all semester. Like from the very beginning of the semester, there'll be a question about what are the parameters, what are the hypotheses. They are like, we answered this, 14 times at this point, and we're like, yes, and you will continue to answer it because it's just that important. So I really love the explorations. The ones that didn't work, I don't know. What do you think didn't work, assignment-wise?
I can't think of any. I would say the biggest problem is the explorations are great, but getting students to do them can be the hard part, because I would say we have the lowest completion rate on explorations.
Agree. Okay. Oh, hey, Chris, down the hall. Can you examine the relationship between those who watch or don't watch the videos and their corresponding grades? Not yet, because we did not have IRB approval to see who has been watching the videos. Now we do. So starting next semester, we'll know exactly who has watched which video, which is kind of big brothery. But we've got IRB approval, so we can do it. And then we can actually look to see if there's a relationship. One thing we added to our weekly introduction video is this semester is we've been adding an extra credit question. Like if you watch the intro videos to the end, you'll hear, and the extra credit question for the week is, what's your favorite kind of pizza, or whatever. And so we can track, at least by who gets the extra credit, who has been watching the videos. Based on the extra credit I've been recording, it's the better students that are watching the videos, which probably isn't that big a surprise. Have we had problems with cheating or plagiarism? So the exams are given in the DLC, so we haven't really had issues there. The DLC makes it super hard for students to cheat. They have to lock up basically everything into a locker before they're even allowed into the testing center. And from what I hear from the DLC staff, the students think the webcams are actually watching them as they take the exam, even though they are not really. So we haven't had any issues on exams. We have had plagiarism issues on the article critiques. And everything else is open book, open notes. So maybe students are taking the quizzes sitting next to each other at the same time. We have no idea, and we made them so that, we're just kind of prepared that this is why they're worth not that much compared to exams. What is your biggest student complaint? Probably that it takes more time than they thought it was going to.
I would say the other one is students view this course as less important because there's not an instructor there twice or 3 times a week. And so I think students dislike that aspect of the course, but then you're like, well, it's online.
Yeah. And the last question, at least the last one that is showing up here, is you said you did not use recorded lectures. How did students get exposed to the instructional content? So it was completely, well, there were 2 ways. A lot of it is through readings. We had sections for them to read every day almost. But then the explorations themselves, if you walk through an exploration, there's so much content in there. You could probably actually just do the explorations, and if you worked through them really carefully, you might not have to read the section. Like the definitions are there, there's explanations of the different concepts. So a lot of it came through the explorations. Okay, You said you don't use the applets for exams. Do you use them for the exercises? Is there any other software you use? We absolutely do use them for the exercises. The exercises are open book, open note. They're sitting on their computer. They can have another tab open with the applets. Many of the explorations and questions actually say, go use the appropriate applet to get this p-value or to calculate this confidence interval. So absolutely they used them on exercises. And even before we tried to use the applet on the exams, we would have a screenshot of the applet that just said, hey, tell us what this says, or we would have blanks on the picture where they would have to tell us what they would put into the applet if they were able to use the applet. And we didn't use any software other than the applet. Did the explorations come from the textbook as well? They do. Yeah. I feel like I was just talking really fast. Other questions?
Any other final questions? That was great. We had at least a dozen or so there. I'd like to again thank both of our, oops, wait, there's one more.
How do you
Sorry,
deal with
ahead.
plagiarism? What's the penalty for these students? I just gave a 0 in the article critique I was grading. Yeah. We have a statement about plagiarism in the syllabus, and yeah.
Great. Well, again, I'd like to thank both Erin and Ella for giving us this wonderful webinar this afternoon. And again, this is sponsored by the section of Teaching of Statistics in the Health Sciences. And we'd like to encourage you to keep your eye out. We'll be doing another webinar in the winter. We have one final question that just popped in. It says, were students full-time or continuing education?
We don't really know. We suspect they were full-time because our section always fills before priority registration ends, which means these are students in degree-seeking programs. And additionally, the vast majority of our students are in Lincoln. Yeah. Like, I think this semester we have one that is taking it with a proctor, taking the exams with the proctor. The rest are taking it at the DLC. Are they traditional aged or adult learners? Again, my guess is traditional aged. I know we've had a few adult learners, but for the most part, when they come visit us anyway in office hours or we see them through the Zoom sessions, to the best of my ability to judge someone's age based on seeing their face, most of them are traditional college aged.
I think based on the surveys, I want to say in the first 2 semesters, the average age was around 20.
Great. Any other questions?
If people have more, they can feel free to email us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys very much. Everyone enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.